Hi, I'm Ethan. I love muzzleloading. We're in the shop today, continuing work on our CVA Hawken Kit. Today we're going to focus on woodworking primarily around our lock and side plate mortises, as well as our trigger plate. Looking at our reference, there's much more, at least in this picture. Now the light in this picture is coming from the top here, which is why we have this highlight here. But it looks to me like we have a much more definition on the underside here on the on this mortise on the front end here. So we're going to work by establishing that in first, and then we'll work just a hair, just a little bit on the top of the front of that mortise, just so we get some definition. I'm going to come in here with a half round. I've kind of drawn on here already what we're looking for, and we're just going to come in like this. I don't want to cut that in too far without working on blending it into the rest of the stock, because what I don't want is a big divot in there. So we're just going to establish this curve, and while I'm doing that, I'm angling the file more and more so that the round area of the file is taking off more of the stock as we push it away rather than the mortise itself. So I'm keeping that curve kind of like that. I'm just angling that file up and out. That way we're not cutting away the mortise, and we're cutting away the stock itself. Like that. As I want to bring this up, we're starting to get back in here where the mortise isn't as separated from the rest of the stock, and it makes me think back to a professor I had talking about line confidence in drawing, where you want to make the line that you want to make the first time, making that line consciously rather than scratching in or sketching in a bunch of lines. And I find, in my experience, in doing this kind of section and working on this kind of mortise, especially on one of these kits, you want to have some file confidence. So you want to make sure that your file's going in where you want it to, and it's staying where you want it to. Otherwise you end up just having a bunch of mush, in my experience, which you don't want. Like that there, I wasn't holding on to it sharp enough. And as always, you can take what I'm doing with a grain of salt. I'm not a professional. I know my file techniques aren't perfect. You know, I drag the file back sometimes. But, you know, just out here having fun. So I'm cutting this in just a little bit more, and you'll notice I'm kind of rotating the file as I do it. Because in the picture I'm looking at, we have a nice dark triangle coming up here, and that's what I want. I want a nice dark point if you were to shine a light on this with this mortise coming up. And I can kind of look at it this way from the side and get a better picture of where we're at in space, and we're starting to get where I want to be. So I'm going to come out here and work this stock a little bit and blend that out. And what my gut is telling me is to get a little bit of a smaller file and come in there and really cut that in. So that might be what we try. Now I'm checking here from the side to make sure I'm not going in too deep, because we want to be able to smooth this out. I'm just coming back in here with a half round and using that round curve to smooth that out. I want to come back in underneath here, remove the lip that that round file makes, checking from the side and from the front. Then what I can do if I really want to is I can come in with that file up on end and I can flatten out that curve. I don't know if that's the right way to do it or not. This is kind of the way I've figured out I'm doing it. I can come in too with my safe-sided file, which you can get or you can make. It's just a file where the edges or these narrow sides don't have any teeth. So there's teeth, no teeth. With that on both sides here of this file, I can actually stand it up and know that I'm just cutting the side face and know that I'm not cutting the lower face here. And with that, I can kind of true up and clean up the curves left by that round file. And like with everything, you know, you go back and forth a little bit. Those flat edges can and will leave creases in there, so you want to be aware of that. I can do the same thing with that safe side, and I can actually increase the contrast on the stock itself by not cutting my vertical face and only cutting my horizontal faces. I'm getting to the point where I'm working this area a lot more than I really want to. So I'm going to try to clean it up and get out of here. With that same half round, I just want to come in here just a little bit. And I want to clean up that just a hair. Not doing a lot here. Primarily looking at how this stock comes up into that barrel. And smoothing out anything left over from our experiments back here. got a little bit of a bump there I don't like. Yeah. And you know, this is another thing that's going to be up to you. You know, this is an area that I find myself holding a lot. So anything that I'm working on, I want to make sure this area in particular is real nice and fits and feels good in the hand. It's hard to make out that side plate. This is a reproduction. This is what we should have been looking at. So we have that's kind of blown out there in the picture, but here you can see we have a much more definition there. Let's take a look and see if we can do a little bit of that. If I want to, I can come in with this large flat and really define that break. So because this has a cutting edge on both the bottom and the sides, I can really differentiate these two planes. That really doesn't look too bad, I don't think. I'm actually liking that more than the effect that we had on the bottom. So I'm going to take that around. So with this large flat file like this, I'm able to really bring the height of this forend of the stock all the way back, which is giving me a nice look, I think. Now where it's becoming tricky on the underside here, where we really need to cut back into a half round. And I'm liking that. I like where that's at. We're going to do some blending on the underside here, but really, for where that was and where it's at now, at least on the forend, I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm sure, you know, if you feel differently, and I'm sure folks out there do, let me know. And if there's a technique that I can be doing differently here, leave it in the comments for me, because I'm more than willing to learn and try something else. Looking at our reference photo here, our point drops down and kind of creates a line back to our cheek rest back here. So I'm going to try to sketch that in. You're not going to be able to see the book as I'm drawing this, but I'm going to do my best to kind of show you all this at once. Bring this out some. So you can see we have our cheek piece coming up here, or at least how it's milled in. And really, they don't have that. Of course, my line's probably not too straight. You'll let me know. They have that line pretty good from the point, or at least their center here of our side plate mortise, or side plate side. They don't have that too far off, I don't think, for pointing back to our cheek rest. So really here, this is about, I'm going to just kind of scribble here, defining this point, which is what we did up here. And I'm just using the shape of the wood here to kind of guide my pencil and keep me up off the main mortise. And that is pretty well defined really up into here, which kind of lines up with our tang on the side. So, you know, more research on my end needs done, but these are the kind of things that can really denote a referenced Hawken from an unreferenced Hawken in any muzzleloader, really. Design-wise, as silly as it sounds on a mass-produced muzzleloader kit like this, design-wise, this stuff lines up a lot. You know, these straight lines line up, these lines line up between our mortise ends, you know, on our cheek piece. And really here, looking at my reference, I'll pull it up here so you can see it. We have definition here separating the side plate mortise, and that really runs up into that tang, or where we can assume that tang is going to stop. And little details like that start to add up, and I think help your muzzleloader look a little bit nicer if that's what you're after. And if it's not what you're after, you know, no shame in that. You know, it's up to you. That's what's nice about these kits, is you can do what you want. Try something a little bit different this time, and just work on establishing these right out the gate with our round file, with our file confidence that we're working on. Just going to cut a nice sharp line in here. You'll notice I'm angling or curving the file as I'm cutting here. Because not only do I want to cut this curve, not only do I want to cut this line in, I want to cut the curve in too. And sitting here going like this is going to take a lot longer. Goddammit. It's not going to look as nice. And I'm cutting down into that wrist, because we want our definition from this mortise into the wrist. I'm not worried about this being too thin. This wrist is already pretty thick. I think we have plenty. And you'll notice here, as I'm doing this, I'm overcutting, so I'm removing some material past my center line. That material is going to have to come out anyway. And by doing it and overcutting that center line, or cutting over that center line, I ensure that I'm going to have a nice sharp point without monkeying around and getting a mushy line in there. Put our reference book there. We can come in a little bit. Okay. And that's all I want to do there. I'm going to come around and we'll start cutting the top line in now. Now it's a little more difficult for me because it's kind of backwards to me being right-handed. So I'm trying to bring that up as much as I can up onto the top of the stock where our tang is. And I'm just going to fade that out as we go up there. Okay. So there's our lines cut in. I'm sorry I can't get you much closer. It's just how the camera equipment's all organized here. But we have some nice contrast there now. I think you can see that with the light and with the color of the wood. These light areas we've just removed. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to get out that nice semi-coarse flat file here with these edges. And based on what we found up at the front end, this is a really quick way to clean this up efficiently and have a nice clean edge. So I'm going to come in here like this. Try to get a nice full stroke from my file. Okay. Bring that same treatment back. So you'll notice when we worked that underside, we brought our center for a point up quite a bit. And we're going to work this top side and we're going to bring it back down till we're just about there at the center. I'm going to come in a little bit with my half round. I've got it up on end here, or kind of up on end, so that when I'm coming up and connecting with the underside of that mortise now, where we have a nice 90°, I'm just enhancing that mortise, and I'm not going to muddy that up as I come up into it. But I'm still able to keep my round area of my file down here on the wrist, so I'm smoothing this out and rounding this out naturally. A lot of this, in my experience, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but is just using the tools that you have and seeing how it interacts with the space that you're working on, and kind of learning from that and adjusting as you go. You can buy a lot of tools, but at a certain point it just pays to use what you have and figure out how to use it when and where you need it. So I'm not going to go any farther down that way until we have our lock plate in, or our trigger plate I mean. So we'll come around here to our other side on the top of the stock. And with this, I can switch over to a larger flat file and move a lot more material. I'm just coming in now and cleaning up from where we had worked these mortises. I'm having a little difficulty getting in here. I'm right-handed, and I'm just not as comfortable using my left hand on something like this, especially in such a prominent area of the kit. So what I found is actually getting into a shorter file here allows you to get in to an area like this without mucking up or really doing a lot of harm anywhere else on the wood. So with this, as you can see, I'm just coming up here along this curve and along these flats, and I'm just riding that and taking away any of those bumps and things in there. So I can come back here now, work this area some, and get rid of the rest of these ridges. And once you get actually to where your file's just working in the wrist area here, it's really not bad. You don't have to do a whole lot of file finagling to make that work. So I've got a little bit of a ridge right there we'll take out. Where I can, I'm trying to be conscious and use the full length of my file. There we go. And I feel pretty good about that. I'm not too picky about my wrist area. And really, when I'm working on a muzzleloader like this, in my limited experience, of course, you know, I like something that has a little bit of tooth. You know, I don't take it to a million grit sandpaper to make everything nice and smooth. I really like a scraped stock finish. If nothing else, other than like the look of it and the feel of working on it, I like the feel of it in my hands and kind of feeling those facets as I'm carrying that particular muzzleloader. So I don't, I'm not going to go through and polish a lot of this. I'm really just trying to get some of the shapes and things cleaned up. Now, I'm not going to touch up here where my tang is at. I'm waiting. I've got my order in for a tang bolt. It should be here any day. But I don't want to work on this area until I have that bolt, and then I know where the final resting place for this tang will be. I don't mind working on the trigger plate end just because it is underneath and inside of our trigger guard. So I'm not worried about that end at all, and working on that without that bolt in there. So right now, I'm taking a look at everything kind of from the top here. You'll notice a little bit of a length discrepancy here between our mortises. That's on me. I'm going to work on evening those up a little bit. And then as we consider that, it's interesting. I don't have a full top down of these. In my head, it makes sense for these to be fairly even. But even in the amount of wood that CVA has left us here, there is a very similar discrepancy in the wood that they've left us. So we're going to come around here and shape our lock plate mortise side a little bit here and get that established. There's really not a lot that needs done on the lock plate side. It's not nearly as dramatic. So if we're pulling this out, this is a Bob Woodfill copy or a version of the Bridger Hawken. And you can see in here around the lock mortise, there's kind of some nice swoops as you come in here, you know, gradual plane changes in here. So we're not going to come in and make this as dramatic as the side plate side as we see here with these shadows and things. I think it's a little bit more subdued on this side. That's just my take, though. As always, these are an experiment. And, you know, it's up to you to make it the way that you want it. You know, if you just like the CVA kit for what it is and want to put it together, there's nothing wrong with that. This is all, you know, the kind of thing that if you're really into Hawkens, you know, trying to find high-res images and things of them and studying those, can really step up and, you know, if nothing else, just increase your knowledge on them. I think that's what's fun about there being so many books and things published these days. You can go out and learn anything. Then back under here, what we want to do is just, there's kind of a section of wood right in here. It's just really bulbous. And we just want to take that down a little bit. And then we'll come through with a flat file and kind of clean this up a little bit. Get rid of some of these. We've got a hard center line ridge right in here. You can see there. From this color tone that we've been working, and then just the oxidized, or, you know, kind of dirty wood over here. We'll come through and clean these up both at the same time. And again, I'm just using the round face of my half round file. It's really one of my favorite file profiles. I know it's just a simple file, but you can do so much with it. And even when you're working with the limited curves of a, you know, a duplicated stock, like these mass production Hawkens, you know, they're just really handy for getting in here and moving some wood. I don't know if you can tell, but just by getting rid of that bulb that we had there, we have a nice profile, I think, coming down off that lock plate mortise. This looks a lot more slender. We have a point coming off of that mortise, but it's not, doesn't seem to be nearly as pronounced as some of the others. So I'm just feeling around with my thumb here and looking at it from this direction, right in line. And I'm just kind of looking for any bumps. And I notice that as I come off of that point, there's a bit of a bump. It might be the kind of thing that a more experienced builder would come in there with a much larger file and hog that away. I'm getting there. Slow and steady. If I want to, is I can face it from this direction over here, looking down this way, and I can come around with this file kind of like so. File towards me. Even this out. I'm just going to hit this a couple more times. And I feel like I like that. I like where we're at there. I don't want to move back. We're still waiting on our butt plate patch to dry up here a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip up on the underside now, get our trigger plate back in here, and we'll get this section of our stock evened up and looking nice. You can see in here we have a little bit of a shadow being cast. So we have some wood to remove here. So we match pretty well up here. Just need to take some of this material from this blue line back down a little bit so this matches up a little nicer. I'm thinking, you know, I'm not quite sure on my trigger guard finish. You know, part of me thinks leave it all together and maybe clean it up and blue it a little bit. Another part of me thinks take it apart and brown it. So I'm not quite sure on that yet. Either way, here with where we're going for the next few minutes, it's going to scratch up a little bit, but that's okay. I'm not hyper worried about that. If you were looking for as little work as possible on a kit like this, I would recommend working slowly, filing some wood, dropping the plate back in, filing some wood, drop the plate back in. Right now, that's set really well from the factory. So if you're unaware, when it comes to muzzleloading, this is a double set trigger. You know, really handy for match or hunting applications. So we have our hair trigger back here. This is a really heavy set. And what that does is, you can see its lever there comes down, that engages our front trigger, and that makes it so it's just real light, like that. I really like set triggers. They're really handy. I think it's neat that these muzzle, even as cheap and as affordable as these were and are, you know, they still had set triggers, which is pretty dope. Pretty hip hop. Okay. So I'm coming in just with the flat face of this half round file. And I'm working on how that butts up to that plate. Now you want to be careful and not hit these screws as much as you can, because those are going to adjust how sensitive your trigger is, and you don't want to lose that function. Just like with a lot of these parts when you're mating hardware and metal too, you want to think about not only the strip, you know, of where this intersects. A lot of times it's really easy to get that to match. You want to focus on how that intersects all the way around. Because when you focus on just this area here, you'll just have a nice flat plane. Which, if that's what you want, that's fine. But if you want this curve to come around and look nice and be even all the way around, all the way through this plate, it's the kind of thing where you want to think about the whole area. And so you want your file marks to be all around this whole area, and I'll show you that here. You can kind of see now we've marked this up with a little bit of blue. So I'm going to come through here and get this face matched up with our plate, and you'll see the delineation or the difference between where it's mated and the material that's still there. So I'm just running flat across that plate to get all this to mate. So there you can see I followed away our blue pencil marks here, and we still have a lot of blue down around here. So now coming in again with just the flat of that file, just evening up those curves a bit. We don't want this to look like or feel like a 2x4 with a trigger and with a hammer. Okay. I appreciate your patience with this series as we continue to work on getting it out for you to enjoy. As always, if you have any suggestions or comments or anything about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, please leave them in the comments below or shoot me an email. I can't guarantee that it's something that I can apply super quickly just because of the scheduling, that it takes some time to produce the video and then edit it to get it out so that you can see it. But I assure you that I try to read all of the tips that come in and apply them to, if not this build, I will certainly apply them to future builds that we go through. I'm really enjoying where this is going. It's been a lot of fun playing with the CVA kit, and I'm excited to get it finished up here pretty quickly. Thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time.